We're recording.
We are recording? Okay.
Yay. Welcome.
Hi.
Hey, welcome to Tough Talks Live. Now, I'm going to just go ahead because I think I messed up the settings.
Okay.
So say something nice to people while I figured something out here.
Something nice to people. See, on occasion, I can do as I'm told. If I want to. So, be that as it may.
While we're getting started, why don't you tell people what you are liking about your body right now?
Oh, yes, that part. So, I think this is my 5th Tough Talk appearance. So, I always say the arms and the chest, those have not changed. Those are things that I very much like about my body. I mean, come on. These arms. These arms. The gun show is loading.
The gun show is loading.
Yes. And I like my pits too.
Yeah.
Hopefully you like my pits too.
Oh yeah.
Well, yeah, he does. So, yeah. What else do I like? My thighs. I don't think I've said that before. I have been liking my thighs. I especially like them when I'm able to go running during the warmer weather, which today is not a warm day. So we're hoping everyone stays warm, has everything y'all need. Please bundle up. Don't play with this. Don't play with this weather. All right. So, yeah. So the arms and the chest are still arming and chesting. And there we go.
There we go. Okay.
Right.
Now I think I have to.
You have to do that.
Do this. Let's see if that's gonna work.
And we're playing around with some things, so we just ask you to be patient with us as we play with some things. There we go.
There we go.
Yay.
All right, everybody.
So let me move back. So get more in the frame.
Get more in the frame.
Yay.
Here's what we're doing. Sorry for the technical
difficulties. And we thank you for standing by.
Or sitting by,
That's
or
it.
laying by, or whichever by. Welcome to Tough Talks Live. We are here in DC. We are here in the DC area.
Yes,
and we are just blocks away, a few blocks away from the Creating Change Conference.
Well, maybe more like a mile away.
We're a mile away.
Right.
Like we're here.
So then I think the question then becomes, why are we a mile away as opposed to there on the premises?
Yeah. We are here a mile away,
Mhm.
and so let's back up a little bit about what's going on, about why we're doing this today. We have a presentation that we do with a colleague named Russell Campbell, brilliant man in Seattle, and we have a few other colleagues that we work with as well.
Right.
And we like to talk about themes called We Have Sex Too, Older Men and Sexual Health.
Exactly.
It is an active, vibrant discussion about gay, queer men over the age of 50.
Exactly.
And some of the sexual, physical, medical, spiritual, emotional challenges that we face over time, but really done in this way that celebrates this moment, this experience of getting older as vital sexual people and learning the tools to maximize the quality of that experience.
And I think the fact that we say we have sex too,
Yeah.
T-O-O, by the
T-O-O.
way, with an exclamation point, serves two purposes. One, we talk about that when it comes to public health and when it comes to public sexual health services, we're among the communities that get ignored.
Right.
But the whole thing is to remind definitely our colleagues as well as our peers, we still have sex.
We have
sex. And I love the exclamation point because what that says is, and we're celebrating it.
Celebrating it.
And we're emphasizing it, and we're not ashamed of it. And, we're putting it out there.
Right.
Emphasis on putting out.
Right. So this is a cool panel we've gotten to do. We've had an opportunity to do this at many conferences, sort of NMAC conferences, some state conferences, some independent agencies and organizations. And then you, beautiful Rod, said, let's put in our bid for Creating Change because it's very much up our alley. This is the Lesbian and Gay Task Force that sponsors this every year. I've been many times, and it is an extremely fun, vibrant, playful, smart conference. So I thought, what a great fit for us in the message we're putting out there. Creating Change does skew younger. However, this is why I thought our presentation really allowed a multi-generational, multi-dimensional approach to understanding that connection between activism and sexual health. And that we are really, you and me and Russell and the colleagues we sort of rotate with are really good at connecting those dots. So when you put in that application and when that answer was yes, I was elated.
We
I was
both
like,
were.
we are doing
We
creating
both
change. We are in DC. We're going to go to DC. It's going to be cold. It's going to be January, but we're going to do this.
Exactly.
Okay. Then,
Yeah.
so this was like a few months ago that we got the yes.
This was a few months ago,
Yeah.
and then what had happened was we were told that we would have to pay the 400. We were offered the 450 rate.
And to me, the key word in that, over the summer, over the fall, was offered.
Right. I made it clear that this was a hardship. For me, as someone among the many Americans who was out of work, for over a year, getting by with, and I don't mind taking it, with assistance and also doing consultant work. And I see someone saying, is this considered gay? Oh, this is very gay. Buckle up, buttercup. We're just getting started. And so I had said, this is a hardship.
Yeah.
What are the what are some of the alternatives? One of them was volunteering, which again, I was willing to volunteer.
Yeah.
My concern was you and Russell work full time. In fact, people know you have your own business. You two would not be getting into town until Friday night. We would then be presenting Saturday morning, and the rest of the conference, and the conference ended on Sunday.
Right.
So I was
So
like,
it's a 5-day conference.
right. And so basically to only have one day did not make sense to me. And I'm advocating again on you and Russell's behalf.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, so the idea was that you could volunteer and you could
Right.
enjoy, because you live here.
Exactly.
So you could enjoy the full 5 days of the conference, which would have been great. Russell and I were coming from out of town, and for various other obligations, we could not be here this week.
Exactly.
We could not come for all 5 days of the conference. However, we still wanted
Right.
to show up and present this material on Saturday, today,
Right.
the 24th. So we were going to do this.
Right.
And then, for me, now this was my communication with the powers that be at the task force.
Right.
It wasn't until December 31st that I was told directly that in order to present, you must pay $450.
And
That's the information I was given on December 31st.
and that was with your communication.
Yeah.
The communication I had was either volunteering or paying the $450. Now we were also offered the $250.
Well, that was later. Yeah.
That was
So
later.
then I made, I was like, well, I appealed because again, between you and me and Russell, we have spoken at dozens of conferences around the world. I have never been told you have to pay to play. And so I asked about that. I said, if I can't attend the conference, but I really want to be there for the presentation, is this a requirement? Is $450 a requirement?
Mhm.
And the information I got back at that point was, well, if you can't do $450, you could do $250.
Right. But at the same time, that was different from the information I was getting.
Right.
So and I think sometimes people forget that people actually talk. So, you being told one thing, me being told another, I was not happy about that. And I'm going to add this piece. When I was talking with another colleague of mine who was also who presented this week, when I was told that they were offered comp registration. In other words, they did not have to pay.
Right.
Theirs was comp.
So that's what we learned at
Right.
the end of this.
And again, that was never offered to us.
Right.
And when I asked about it, I never got a response. So just the whole idea of there was miscommunication, non-communication, different communication, it just really left a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
And it's a shame because what we have to talk about and what we will talk about is, like you said, so vital.
Right. So now let's talk about that. Let's let people know it sucks we couldn't do this at Creating Change. It's an important subject. It's valid. It's relevant. It's really relevant to what's happening today.
Mm-hmm.
Why don't you tell people what it was you were going to be discussing today at the Creating Change conference?
So usually when we do this, I serve as both presenter and moderator because it's a panel it's a panel presentation. So the piece that I usually talk about is relearning my sexuality after a heart attack. And I've spoken in the tub about this before, but I wanted to bring it to Creating Change because there are so many of us. Again, and most people know I'm HIV positive. I'm also the survivor of 2 heart attacks as well. So it was really the second heart attack, and we were a couple, and we are a couple and we were together at the time that I had my second heart attack. I think what was very important for me was, first of all, relearning how to have sex, and especially in the first 6 months of my recuperation and my healing. Because again, like many men over 50, one of the things I rely on is Viagra, sildenafil, the regular name for it. And sildenafil, like so many other, I hate the term ED or erectile dysfunction, so I like to say sexual enhancing medications, are vasodilators that expand the vessels to allow better blood flow. That in combination with, let me see, so I was taking nitroglycerin. Me having to take nitroglycerin for my heart posed a problem with taking Viagra, because those are two vasodilators that, if I had taken them together, could have caused a serious drop in blood pressure and could have been fatal. And this was something we talked about. So one of the things I had to learn was, how do I have sex in this period? And I talked, and this was important too, I talked with my cardiologist. And so we had a frank and honest conversation. So one of the things was, we agreed to a 6-month period to allow my heart to heal, to prioritize the nitroglycerin, but that meant relearning how to have sex, particularly as someone who identifies as a versatile top. So then I was concerned about, okay, will my erections come still? Will they be as strong as I'm used to them being? And will I be able to please my partners, including my main baby over here? So these were conversations that we had to have. And the thing that I learned is that, whether it's because of heart issues or many other issues, other older gay men face similar challenges. Some decide to explore their options. Some decide to give up sex, period, which to me is like, no, 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 no. And I think that's the point of our panel. We don't have to give up sex. And for me, it was about being able to have someone, not just my cardiologist, not just my partner, but also peers with whom we could talk with, to say, hey, this is going on. What kind of support can you offer? So that's usually the piece that I talk to, the importance of, like not letting, still not letting go of our sexuality, even with health challenges, especially as we get older. The other thing, because I've been a provider. I've been in HIV prevention for 4 decades now. And so one of the things as an independent consultant that I do is a training with one of our colleagues, Louis Shackelford. I got to give my boy a shout. The training that we do Beyond the Red Ribbon, which is a sex positivity training. And it was our experience, because we were together. Basically, the discharge nurse, he tried his best, but he was not prepared to answer our questions about having sex after a heart attack. So the first question that we had was, now mind you, I gotta set the scenario. I'm in bed. I'm in the hospital bed. We both are. He's cuddled up, he's holding me, making sure I'm okay. It is clear we're a couple. And that did not freak out the nurse, to his credit. In fact, he spoke to both of us, and I will give him credit for that. The problem came, for him anyway, came in when we were asking about sex. And so he turned very red. For those of you who may be watching this live, if you see the live button at the top of the screen, that's how red he turned when we were asking about sex. And so then, I'm trying to remember all of the details. So basically, he was like, well, first of all, he started off by saying what we couldn't do. And then Damon was like, well, that doesn't help us. We need to know what we can do. And again, the face turned even redder than the live button.
He was not prepared.
He was not prepared. He tried. He was like, well, you can be passive, but you can't be active. And what got me was, and I said to him, because now it was my turn, I said, well, dude, whether I'm topping or I'm bottoming, I'm active. So you need to be more explicit. And we thought we were going to have to call the nurses to take care of him, because he just was not ready. And he tried. But what we realized was, okay, he's not ready. And
he didn't have the information.
And that's what I was going to say, because
Yeah.
and in case people think in this case this was not about homophobia, because my roommate in the hospital at the time, this was almost 3 years ago, uh, really nice straight guy. His wife came in to, of course, assist him. They did not get any information either. They did not ask, nor were they offered. And what that said to me was, this was a missed opportunity. There was assumptions because of our health status. There was also assumptions because of our age. Well, why would we want to be interested in sex at this point?
Right.
And I find with most of our colleagues that that's a preferred approach to not dealing with sexual health, particularly with older adults. And that's why we wanted to have this conversation.
Right.
To say, hey, this is still a thing. And I'm not the only speaker, because you have your own presentation that you do as part of the panel.
Well, I was going to say, and at this point, this is typically where our colleague Russell would fill in some of the gaps in terms of data, in terms of the science, in terms of the numbers. When we pretend that people are not having sex, when we pretend or neglect or dismiss that people over the age of 50 are not having sex, he shows that consequences are we have higher HIV rates in certain areas with certain ages. STI rates are very high among straight and gay people over the age of 60 and 70 because we're not being treated or spoken to or given tools or access to tools as proactive, responsible, empowered sexual adults.
Right, exactly.
And so Russell often does a great job of showing the data and the numbers of why this data, it's not just, it's fun, but it's also really important for public health for us to address these issues in a sex positive, culturally appropriate way. With that, I also like to add to my experience of someone who is not living with HIV or with whom HIV is not living with me.
Right.
And having been part of that generation that grew up during the AIDS crisis, that came of age during the AIDS crisis, understanding in my brain that wiring is like, oh, if you enjoy sex too much, you could get AIDS and die like Rock Hudson. And that shadow was cast on my sexual experiences for more than 20 years of my life.
Exactly, I get it.
Right? Once I learned what pre-exposure prophylaxis were, or PrEP, I learned that I had a pill, that there was a way to have sex and not get HIV. And I didn't know that till I was age 40. So I didn't really start having the kind of sexual pleasure and encounters that I wished to have until I was the age of 40. And that was 14 years ago.
Right.
And for so many, and I thought, okay, this is just me. But then I started this group on Facebook where thousands and thousands of people around the world in a similar age range were talking about very similar experiences. This sort of new awakening. And people are still figuring this out. And in their 50s and 60s, starting PrEP and saying, now we're able to enjoy so many kinds of pleasure, but we're still getting this sort of finger wagging from our doctors or from our providers, or I don't know, this sort of reluctance or over exaggeration of potential side effects that can make that go wrong. And I think that's a big part of why those numbers of people using PrEP are not higher, especially the people over the age of 50. So there are so many ways that we can experience pleasure. And especially as we get older, we understand that one of the greatest dangers we face is not necessarily, cardiac events, yes, but one of the greatest health challenges we face as we get older as gay people is loneliness. And the impact of loneliness has been estimated. If people suffer with chronic loneliness, the health impact of that is equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day, according to our Surgeon General, our former Surgeon General. As well as higher blood pressure, more cardiac events. So we want to talk about connection and touch and intimacy and vulnerability in a way that really celebrates and elevates our spirit, our soul, and our bodies. And that is exactly why we do this. And this is why we serve our communities. And this is why we try to normalize and extend these conversations and hold spaces at conferences where we can have exchanges and dialogues about this. Because this, definitely resonates for some people, and other people find this very offensive and challenging. And we can talk about all that.
Right, and some things I wanted to add to that piece. When we talk about the loneliness, it's not just the physical loneliness. It's the isolation of feeling I am the only one, or I don't know anyone else going through what I'm going through. So that's one thing.
Which our cohort is particularly vulnerable to.
Exactly.
Because of ageism, because of homophobia, often because of racism, but also because we're part of a generation that lost a lot of our friends and peers during the AIDS crisis.
Exactly.
So a lot of people are alone right now, not by choice, but because that created family that they had formed are gone.
And not just created family, also bio family as well. So, it's funny because when Renaissance came out, everyone was just loving the house groove, but Renaissance was also a tribute to Beyonce's uncle, who I think would have been in our cohort had he lived. And I think people forget that piece. But yeah, all of that to say in terms of what was lost, many of us in this and from behind and the following generation lost. And I agree with you 100%. And we provide the space with the We Have Sex Too for people to talk about that sense of isolation, that sense of loneliness, that sense of fear and trepidation. And I don't know what to do. I feel hopeless. And I know one of the things you, me, and Russell tend to emphasize is the hope, the success, the joy. One of the things, and with one of our colleagues who was with us, well, let me rephrase that because I don't want to, but he's still very much alive, but he had to step away from the panel. But one of the important pieces that he brought was talking about substance use. And again, we do tend to frame substance use in terms of younger adults.
Yeah.
But he talked about not only struggling with substance use, struggling with recovery and sobriety, and having to rewire how he thought about sex because he associated sex with substance use, and that's more common than we realize. And then how, as an older person, how, again, then having to relearn sex for a different reason than I did, having to relearn sex
without drugs,
without drugs, without substances, having to relearn sex as an older man, and the shifts that come when you're a pretty young thing, and realizing you're not a pretty young thing anymore, but you haven't realized that we've matured and transitioned into a hot daddy or a hot mama. Some of us have not made that transition yet.
Right.
So the whole
that transition to embracing and celebrating your sexual identity as a hot mama or hot daddy, or as an empowered adult over the age of 50. Like, we tap into that, and we like to help other people see how they can access that energy.
Exactly.
Because the fact is, when you do access that energy, when you do access that inner confidence, that vibe, it gives you a mojo.
It does give a mojo. And what I liked about his presentation was that he really talked about the struggle of it. Because I think, whereas I had some, and I had to think about this too. On my father's side of the family, I had examples of older men who were still sexual in their 50s and 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
My great uncle George, who died while having sex. I hope Uncle George does not mind me telling that. But yeah, he was sexual up until 78.
Wow.
My father, who died last year, at age 79, was sexual with his partner, female partner, by the way. Yeah, but with his partners until he just could not anymore. And he was real clear, I'm going to enjoy sex. I had those examples. So the idea of me being sexual and being older, for me, is like, yeah, I got and even my pops said, may he rest in peace, we got a legacy to uphold.
That's right.
Many of us, particularly as gay men, don't have that.
Right.
We don't have that.
Right.
So I appreciated our colleague who said, this is a struggle, and that resonated. That even affirmed the people who were struggling, who would come to these panels.
And the more visibility we have, just like you had visibility in your family.
Mm-hmm.
I had a little bit in mine, but not, but to see people in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s who are embracing life, embracing change, embracing connection and sex, the easier that road becomes for everybody else.
Right.
That's why we love doing this panel so much. That's why I love doing these Tub Talks so much. And that's why I really love having these conversations and saying, well, if we're not going to do this a few blocks away at Creating Change, we're going to do this here in your bathtub at home.
Exactly.
Because this is an opportunity for us to do things differently.
Welcome to my home.
Welcome to Rod's home.
Right.
This is a really nice tub, by the way. I like this wall.
I do too.
Yeah. And that even though things are so scary in so many ways in our world, in the sexual space, in the sexual empowerment space, there are more opportunities than ever to be a sexually healthy person than ever before. And I just want to briefly say what those are. Okay?
Please.
For those who are not living with HIV, PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis is nearly 100%, whether you're taking it as a pill or getting it as an injection. If you talk to your provider, you learn more about this, you take it as prescribed, your protection is nearly 100% from ever getting HIV. If you are a person with whom HIV is living with, and you are on your drugs, meds, in a regular way, and you're adherent, you are undetectable. Undetectable means you cannot transmit HIV to others. That you are U equals U. Undetectable is untransmittable. That the likelihood of you transmitting HIV to another person sexually is literally zero. There is no risk of that. So that's where I say, if we put PrEP and we put U equals U together, it's like, okay, they're fine by themselves, but when we put them together, it's like peanut butter and jelly.
Exactly.
They are smushed together and they're very sweet, they're very tasty. And then the most exciting thing for me in recent years has been in terms of the innovations as preventing sexually transmitted infections, STIs, that we now know that 2 doses of a common generic antibiotic called doxycycline is about nearly 90% effective in preventing syphilis and chlamydia, and a little less effective in preventing gonorrhea, but still 50% or 55% is still pretty damn high. So we have all these tools and methods. If we choose to be sexually engaged and sexually successful, we sometimes say slutty, or we say sexually successful,
and I love
but we have all
successful.
these ways of doing that and enjoying it. And for those who have not gotten their Mpox vaccine, please consider doing so, because that's another tool we have to have sexual contact with minimal risk, with minimal pain, minimal harm. And all of that to say is that we have these tools, and for a lot of people, sexual connection has nothing to do with any of that. For a lot of people, sexual connection and touch and play has nothing to do with penetrative sex or any goals that have to do with ejaculation or coming. None of that. For a lot of people, it's just that wonderful oxytocin that we get from playing and touching and sniffing and tasting and all that good stuff. This is what I mean when I say this is the most exciting time to be working in sexual health. We've both been doing it. You've been 4 decades, I've been 3.5 decades. This is absolutely the most exciting time to be able to offer this information and help people understand their emotional and spiritual potential via these sexual innovations and perspectives.
Exactly. That was a mouthful.
Probably don't need the coffee, but okay.
Maybe it's because of the coffee. Who knows? No, you're pretty much like this. Period. And one of the things is I'm very much pro DoxyPep, and many of us who are in HIV and STI prevention and public health in terms of sexual health have heard the term status neutral when it comes to HIV. I've been really critical of that term because most of our services really are geared toward specifically if you're HIV positive or HIV negative. But I love DoxyPep because what that says to me is because it focuses on STI prevention, I really do believe that is the one intervention that is truly status neutral, that anyone can access. Again, me being HIV positive, and I also want to stress the importance of adherence and staying on meds, not just for my physical health, but in terms of protecting myself, protecting my partners from HIV infection. That allows me to have the kind of sex that I want to have. Not all of us, if we can have some real talk, don't like condoms. So therefore, staying on meds for someone who's HIV positive.
Not everybody uses condoms?
Well, actually, why?
Are we allowed to say that on YouTube?
Honestly, I don't know. I hope not.
I hope not.
But having said that, but one of the things around DoxyPep is that, again, the one barrier that providers, our colleagues, may give around not prescribing PrEP because it doesn't protect against STIs, DoxyPep does that, particularly the bacterial ones. So therefore, and I say to myself, anyone can access this. Anyone can protect themselves. And that's just what I want people to know as well. What's been also very interesting is, as I've been glancing at the live, there's been some trolls, and of course, which tells me we must be doing something right. But more importantly, rather than acknowledging and ultimately ignoring the trolls, we really want this to be a space for people who do want the information, who, ignore the trolls because as far as I'm concerned, the trolls who are here, Shakespeare said it best. Me think the ladies do protest too much. Right. But at the same time, we really want this to be a space for people who really want the information, especially for those of us who are older. And by older, we do mean 50 and 50 on up.
Right.
So
Now, I'm not sure how to see, there's a lot of comments and I can't even see them all, and I'm not sure how to decipher the trolls from legitimate questions. Because one of the reasons I was excited to take this to YouTube
right.
was so that we could have active engagement and answer
Exactly.
questions the way we would do at Creating Change, or
Right.
every other conference we've ever done.
So
Because we love that part. I mean, I love that part. That's sometimes the best part, is when we get to get the audience involved and get the questions and the conversations and the dialogue. And sometimes we go to really interesting places.
Right.
And I love that part.
You know,
I don't know if we're going to be able to do that here. But
so
look at that for a minute. I'm going to see if I can find a legitimate question.
So while you do that, one of the questions that we often get. So because we're open about being a couple and being in a relationship, we often get questions about how we, how do we do what we do? How do we have conversations about being open? How do we navigate, sex with each other, sex with other people, and still keeping the integrity of our relationship? We've often gotten those questions. We really get a lot of questions around people who have challenges accessing PrEP.
Yeah.
Either because, again, not knowing the information, thinking that this is a younger person's thing and not really realizing that, PrEP is for older folks too. Also talking about with PrEP, especially with DoxyPEP, provider resistance. Their doctors don't want to prescribe it. They don't want, they don't want to give it, that sort of thing. We've had those kind of questions. Also questions from other people who have had, and this brings me to one of our other colleagues who have presented with us. People have talked about living with cancer, living with HIV, as well as heart issues, and how that's impacted their own sex lives. So having people really talking about, as I've gotten older, my body has changed. I've had prostate cancer, I've had different types of cancer, so this has impacted how I have sex. And either people talking about, hey, I've struggled with this, or I've given up on sex, and that's the most heartbreaking piece. People giving up on sex, not because they want to, but because they feel like they have to.
Yeah. Or they feel like nobody would want to be with them, which is wrong.
Right.
And yeah.
Exactly.
So I guess, is there anything else you think that would be important or that you wish we could have talked about in that conference space?
In that conference space, in addition to the topics we brought up here, one of the other things has always been bringing this to other communities, via other conferences, via community events. Just really having us. We've even done this for the first time virtually.
Yeah,
that was interesting.
Oh, yeah.
That was now me personally. I'm old school. I prefer face to face. I prefer having the interaction of the community live, so that I can read the room and I can say, okay, someone's not speaking, or this is a really hot topic, let's explore this more. But that was different doing it virtually. So I know that is something we've talked about, all of us have talked about.
We've actually done a few. More. We did the National Sexual Health Conference. We did the Shanti Project.
Right.
We've done a few versions of this.
And we did a hybrid of it, live and virtual, for Arizona.
Right.
Arizona State Department of Health.
Right.
Where I was live, some of the local presenters were live.
Yeah.
And I know Russell and one of our other colleagues were beamed in, through Zoom. So it's very exciting. What that says to me is that people want to have this conversation.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll even say for Creating Change, the fact that we were initially, what was I ready to say? Yeah, we're initially accepting this says we know what we need to do.
Yeah.
We need to have these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to thank for people who are watching this, and I guess people are watching it. I can't really get what's going on, but we are both accessible if you want to ask us questions on social media. And I just ask people anyone who's been watching this, or anyone, to consider what it means to be proactive, responsible, empowered about their pleasure and their protection. Usually when we talk about PrEP, the doctors call it pre-exposure prophylaxis, which is the medical term.
Right.
But I think for so many of us, what all of these innovations have allowed us to do is to think about how can we be proactive,
right,
responsible, and empowered about our pleasure and our protection. And for some people, that might mean condoms. For some people, that might mean abstinence. For some people, that might mean getting 30 loads at the Creating Change Conference tonight. I don't know.
Hey.
That's not for me to say. It's just saying that when we're proactive, responsible, and empowered about our pleasure, we have a very different approach and relationship to our bodies and to other people's bodies in a way that can be very satisfying and meaningful at all stages of life.
Exactly, exactly. And the whole term you mentioned earlier, sexually successful, which I do want to add, that was a term that a colleague, and I wish I remembered her name because I want to give her credit, at one of NMAC's biomedical summits, the one that I spoke at. She used the term sexually successful, and I've used that when I've done HIV testing because a lot of people come to when they come to clinics for services, they have so much shame, they have so much embarrassment. So I try to reframe it saying, no, you had sex, you were sexually successful. Let's talk about how, you can keep on doing it and just, and be healthier with it.
Live your best life.
Exactly.
In the healthiest way possible.
And I think that's an important message, especially for those of us who are older, who are 50 or older, because again, and I think in our larger society, we often talk about sex as the younger person's game. There's this expectation about older people not being interested in sex anymore. And those that are, we're often given negative, terms like dirty old man, cougar, chicken hawk is an older term. And it's funny how cougar and chicken hawk are terms that come out of the assumption that older folks only want to have sex with younger people. And that's not always the case. So the thing is that for me, I like the term sexually successful at any age, but particularly for folks in our age group and older. Again, you're 54, I'm 58. And I really like the idea of people being older, as I said earlier, embracing that and saying, hey, we can do this. Yeah. We can enjoy sex too. Again, we have sex too.
We have sex too. Mm-hmm. All right, on that note, everybody, I hope think about these ideas, consider these ideas, how they may apply to you, or maybe they don't apply to you, but how the idea of being proactive, responsible, and empowered about your pleasure might work for you in so many areas of your life.
And if you know someone, because this is going to go up on your page, right? Yeah. So if you know someone who might be interested in this for real, because there's information that they can use, share it with folks. I'll probably post it on mine as well.
Yeah, beautiful. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Have a great, safe afternoon.